Let me move my feet. And because God requires one thing for you to participate in your reality,
Come on.
let me move my feet from what just occurred here to say, how do I harness this energy and turn this back around and get over here to where what I was experiencing is just that, just an experience? And how do I use it as wisdom? Because you can't have wisdom without going through life and picking up experiences and getting on to Trey, what is it that we were back doing again? Oh, right. We were accomplishing things. We were chasing
Come
our
on.
goals. We're climbing that ladder, not just outwardly, but I'm climbing that ladder internally.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tre'd Talk. It's your boy Tre Tipton. Today I got an immaculate guest. One of my good friends, man, Keith Callaway Jr. Round of applause if you can't hear it, but now you see it. With that said, man, if you didn't know, now you know. And if you knew, tell everybody you know, because we need you to help us get some more followers, man. So we appreciate you. But first things first, Keith, welcome to Tre'd Talk. How are you doing, brother?
Man, it's an honor and a privilege to be on here from the places we came from, Trey, to be on like Zoom screens that man, it's a long ways from home. You know what I mean?
100%. For those of you who don't know, Keith is he's a fighter, man. And I've been wanting to say this to you, but I'm glad I could say it on Trade Talk today. Keith is one of those guys, man, who's not only found ways to fight in life, but has won, you know what I mean? And had really gone through some real battles and some tough situations. So I wanted to commend you, Keith, on this show for being able to not only just be a strong man, but being a strong warrior of life. Because what you've been through, man, I got to give credit where it's due. You know what I mean? You stepped in and you did your thing the way that you were supposed to. So I wanted to commend you on that, Keith. And then also I wanted to say, man, congratulations on being a father. For those of you who don't know, my man Keith is a father now, man. So I'm so happy for you and your family. I wanted to be able to say that to you in person, but I'm happy to be able to say it here on Trade Talk. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Appreciate that. I got a buddy who I sent the picture to right after I got him, and like in the next 30 to 60 days, you'll see my all my socials just blow up with pictures of my son because it'll be like the adoption will be finalized. But I sent a picture to a buddy. He goes, I don't know that I've ever seen you smile like that. He goes
Oh
like, you're
man.
a happy person. He goes, but like your body is smiling. Like it because it's me in the delivery room just holding him and looking at him, and I'm like, dude, this is so amazing.
Now, Keith, I wanted to ask you this, man, because I found out recently, probably about 2 years ago, that I was adopted. Um, and to be honest with you, it's probably the best decision that my family could have made for me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like I definitely can't complain on that end. But as a father, right, like you could tell you're extremely happy, bro. Like, and anybody who's seen any of those pictures of you and your child or just anything at all, just from the emotion that you had from TCS, man, you could tell that like this is one of the biggest things for you personally. You know what I mean? And I genuinely I'm happy and I'm excited I could be a part of that for a very short second. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
for another 18 to however long the kid got got
Yeah.
around with Uncle Tre. But ultimately, man, genuinely very happy for you and your family, man.
It's a blessing and an honor. And we don't take that lightly.
So with that said, Keith, man, for those of the people who don't know you, man, tell them a little bit about your story, man, and a little bit about what you've been through, just because I can't lie to you, Keith. Like you make it easy for guys like me to being in an area where I'm not naturally used to. You know what I'm saying? Just due to the fact that I've been through my own trauma and trials and tribulations, man. But to hear somebody like you to also go through those things and be able to step up and step on, as I like to say, man, because you had a chance to just call it quits, right? Just like a lot of guys. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't mind, share a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So I've always been a little different, right? Like at the beginning of my life, like overachieving made me feel valued. So early on, it was like, I was always the kid that was like, mom and dad said this, don't do that. And then
Right.
it worked into scholastics and then in sports. And that doesn't translate well into adult life, right? Like you're not going to get extraordinary recognition for ordinary action. Like if you
Right.
need an applause when you walk into work on time, like the likelihood of that happening is very low. Um, and like and to make it a very short summary, I married my first girlfriend, married for most of my 20s. She one day she was like, I love you, but I'm not in love with you.
Mm.
And a divorce happened. I was 20 when I got married to her, so I'd never really drank. So I started going out to the bar because that's what 29-year-olds do with a whole bunch of available time.
Right.
And you're looking for like people, right? Like I wanted to be around people who were looking to forget life and kind of take the escape off of all the things that were pressuring in life. So I hung out
Right.
at the bar. Eventually, if you hang out with people that are like me without spirituality, you find yourself in situations where drugs are normal, like not just normal, but like invited, accepted. Like we can't drink without drugs. This is the
Right.
kind of people I hang out with. And I slipped off a cliff. Like I walked off the cliff, but I thought I slipped. And
Mm.
I gave everything in life away. I gave my dignity, my self respect, my spirituality, all of the things, all of my worldly possessions were, those were gone first, but all of the things down to like I was sitting in front of an attorney after the seventh arrest in 6 months. And he said, man, I can't keep you out of prison. Either you're going to prison or you go to rehab. And me being the dirtbag that I was, I'm a recovering dirtbag today. I was like, well, are there chicks in rehab? And he said, yeah, I think so. And I said, well, that sounds better because I hear there's not many chicks in prison. And so I made arrangements to show up to this rehab. And yeah, I was a day late. So I was supposed to go to this co-ed rehab. That didn't happen. I ended up in an all-male rehab.
Oh man, you end up in prison anyway.
I ended up in the same spot. Now, I will say, to like, I showed up. So we went to Palm Springs. The Palm Springs one was like, hey, you were supposed to be here yesterday. Your bed's full, you know. But we have
Right.
this all male one in Santa Monica. So the all male prison that I called it, because I did call it the same thing. I was like, this is like jail. Had no door, had no bars on the windows. Like I could walk away and walk down the street to go to the liquor store if I
Right.
so wanted. Um, but it was 4 blocks from the beach. If you ever hear me say I'm from Southern California, it's because I spent 6 weeks in rehab in Southern California. Oh yeah, I lived in Southern California once. I lived right there in the heart of Santa Monica, uh, right, like a block off Santa Monica Boulevard in Fourth.
You
And
feel me?
yeah, so that was like the beginning of the end, but also the beginning of the beginning,
Mm.
right? So people say like once you start straightening your life out, like everything gets better. Well, that's not true. Like when you start showing up for the consequences of life, life gets really hard. My
Mm.
life got really hard for about 18 or 24 months, where my I was submitting to the authorities over me, right?
Mm.
Jail, like not just the government, but like
Right.
people suggesting, hey, maybe you shouldn't drive without a driver's license. Maybe you should show up on time. Maybe you should do all these things, go into treatment, having my mom pick me up at 31 years old.
Mm.
Not appreciating that my mom would, and not appreciating that I even had a mom, right?
Right.
All these things are things that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing that you're here. But God was just kind of working his way into, hey, I got a story for you. This isn't it, but it is part of it, right? Like I'm
Mm.
going to use this to become something that is a platform that you can talk to people about. And kind of to finish the shorter summary up, what you did doesn't define you, but it does dictate how you can go to the next level. And that's what I talk about a lot. Like I did a lot of stupid things. And when you start owning that, which is why I told you earlier, I was like, nothing's off limits or whatever you want to talk about.
Right.
Because the moment that I start telling the story, Trey, it no longer has power over me because it's no longer a secret.
Right.
Right now, I get to tell the story and say, "Hey, yeah, I did probably steal from you. I probably tried to sleep with your girl. I definitely stole your money and drugs, and and like, and then all the other pieces that go with that. But
Right.
today, like the difference is all those things. Those like I talk about this a lot. If you take your pain, you add some purpose, it turns into power.
Oh, say that
Right?
again. Hold on. I
If
gotta
you
write that down
yeah,
somewhere.
if you take your pain, you add purpose, it turns into power. Right? And either you let people dictate the story of your pain for you and then you're powerless, or
Mm.
you talk about it and you become powerful.
Mm.
It's this dynamic that I get to choose. Early on, somebody said, hey, either you own it and you change from it, or somebody owns you and you get to be like the person underneath someone's thumb.
Oh, come on, man. Come on, Keith. You're talking that real stuff right now because that's certain things that I feel like there's people who watch this show, right, that could genuinely use that information. You know what I mean? So if you
Yeah.
don't mind just going into it, man, like I remember one time I basically call you the only version of Breaking Bad that I know. You know what I'm saying? A lot of y'all got the Netflix version of Breaking Bad, but I got the real version. But with that said, Keith, if you don't mind, bro, just give us a brief example of like what you were thinking, if you were thinking during that time of being an addict, and then also like that realization, like, how did it hit you? Because I know there's one story that's an extremely powerful story between you and your father that
Yeah.
it made me open my eyes to my relationship with my father. You know what I mean? And it was
Yeah.
one of those things where I was like, okay, that's why I call you my favorite white black guy. You know what I mean? Just because, like,
I'm
man,
your favorite brother.
you're my favorite brother, man. Because I like just seeing you and just talking to you, man. Like, I knew somebody like you growing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had somebody around me that was like you growing up, and not to me to see you come out of that, right, gave me that hope for my other family members, for my other friends, for my other people that I personally know. You know what I mean? So if you don't mind, go into that a little bit, just about what you were thinking. The power that you gained from being around your family and your family nonstop giving you no choice.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I had a conversation with your mom, bro, and your parents, man, they love so hard. It's sometimes tough, tough, tough,
Yeah.
tough love, but they don't stop loving, man. So go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll share one about my mom because she is a savage.
Usually
But
it is.
I mean, there's probably other adjectives that could properly describe her, but I'm not Jay Duran. I don't have that kind of a kind of a vocabulary. Um, my mom would walk in to where I was dealing drugs, whether it was my house or the shop that I was doing all this stuff out of, and she would start like she'd walk up with her camera, start snapping photos like this of people's faces. She's like, "Give me your ID or get out." And then she would just stand there. Like these people, I'm like, Mom, I'm trying to do a drug deal. I'm trying to buy some drugs. Like, you got to leave. You got to leave. And she's like, not until I get some photos of their IDs. And she's standing there and then she just park, right? Lillian
Wow.
just parks herself in the middle of the room. I got a scale set up over here. I got girls over here. I got a bag of money. I got bags of dope.
And she's just chilling.
She'd just be like, I'll wait. And like, it wasn't like I'll wait 30. She was like, I'll wait, period. Like she
Whoa.
just there. And that's the person who is forcing themselves into my life. So that's what was happening. I'll talk to my, about the one on my dad at the end. What was happening in the middle is that when I like everywhere I went, Trey, I would take the mirrors and I would take them off the wall. So
Mm,
whether I was in a hotel room, whether I was at home, whether I was at the shop, anything that had a mirror either had something hanging over it or there was tape over it or something. Because when I looked in the mirror and I saw me, I was ashamed of who I was. Right. So
man.
I would walk into a room knowing that I couldn't be me because I thought I was despicable and I thought I was worthless.
Mm,
And my mom would come in and say, I value you. I love you. I want to see you and I want to see you change. And so I would push her away, right? Because she's trying to tell me something about me that I don't believe to be true
right.
because I wasn't valuable in my eyes. I am not lovable. And like everybody in my life at that moment in time, my perspective was everybody's temporary because everybody's leaving.
Oh, that's a huge
Right.
statement, Keith. You gotta, before we move
Yeah.
on, man, you gotta talk about that, man, because I feel like there's a lot of people in life that genuinely are going through that
Yeah.
without being an addict. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
explain that a little bit, man, for
So
real.
this is a two-part thing. We'll talk about the relational one, and then we'll
Hmm.
talk about the familial one.
Okay.
So the relational one, I didn't have really, I didn't have really good, strong relationships. I learned legalism. I learned transactional interactions between people, and like I could use you, you could use me. Like you were worth something to me, and I was worth something to you. But it usually turned into cash, right? Like
Right.
I was worth a deal, or I was worth X, Y, and Z. So I had this broken belief around what relationships and friendship look like. So I entered into the world of dating and then eventually getting married as this transactional type relationship where I gave something to my then ex-wife and she would give me something in return, right? Guys are a 20-year-old is motivated by one thing, and we can just say it like they're motivated by my mom says you got enough blood to run this head or that head, not both,
It's
right?
undefeated.
Yeah, like it's just the facts. It's not gross, it's not over the line. It's just like when a guy gets sex on his mind, like he's broken. Like he doesn't
Right.
have conscious thought about how to do the right thing. He only has thought about one thing.
Hmm.
So this girl gave me attention. I married her because I wanted something from her, and
Mm.
we had a transactional marriage. Right?
Wow.
I thought I was being a good husband, but what it really was is if I did what she wanted, she gave me what I wanted, and there was no foundation for us to get together where like I enjoyed spending time with her, where I
Mm.
wanted to know what her hopes and dreams were. So when I say she fell out of love with me, it's not because she was a terrible person. I don't know her anymore. I don't talk to her. What happened was I was so selfish and focused on what I wanted that there wasn't any room for what she wanted.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So when you're focused on what you want and getting what you want, and then somebody comes and tells you what you want doesn't matter to me anymore because I can't get fed from you, like I can't get the closeness or the intimacy I'm seeking, and she leaves, now everything that I thought to be true about life is gone. Right? Like all of the things that I was like, okay, if I go to work, if I make money, if I give her a nice car, if I make sure the lights are on, if I let her go out with her friends, or whatever those things are in your life, if you keep checking those boxes, but you don't bring it full circle, like a relationship is a circle, you got to give and take, and you can't keep records of it. You got to give selflessly. And a good relationship, which I have now, I give to her 100% and she gives back more than that. And then I want to give more. And then
Mhm.
she wants to give more. And like, we're constantly filling our cups up from each other, but never emptying.
Oh, come on.
So,
Come
so
on.
that's the relational trauma that I walked into this with. So you take that whole belief system, Trey, and you throw it out the window and you
Right.
break it and you say, she didn't care. She didn't actually love you. She just used you. She wanted something that you couldn't provide. Now you're meaningless or worthless. So you add all these insecurities in, and then you go to what the world says, which is don't let them push you around. You take what you want. Like you're the man, blah, blah, blah. So I do what men do, what hurt people do, and I hurt people. Right. So
Mm,
I say things, I throw daggers because I want to win.
right.
That happens. That gets me into this season of where I'm doing drugs. And then my mom does the, hey, you're valuable, I want you to do
Right.
this. We get to about a year into when I'm doing drugs, and I show up with a truck that's not mine and somebody else is driving, and my dad's at the shop. It's a Sunday. I know what day it was. It was a Sunday afternoon in July. This is like 2 or 3 months before I get sober. And my dad comes up to me and he grabs my shirt and he says, and he's like he's so emotional that he can barely say the words. I'm not letting go till you know I love you.
Mm,
Not letting go until you know I love you. And then he kept begging me, just get in the truck, son. Just get in the truck. We'll go to work. You can sleep it off in the truck. I just want you to know I love you. Just come with me. Keep going with me. And I just kept saying, Dad, I don't know who you're talking to. I don't want none of this. Like, I got things I gotta go do. And there were two guys that showed up in that truck with me and they left. Like they couldn't be around because they watched that and they didn't understand what they were watching. They wanted to see it and they were jealous of it, but it was so intense watching my dad love me in one of the most broken moments of my life. And they said it was so intense and we were so emotional, we had to leave and go get high.
mm,
They were like, we'll come back for you later or whatever, because we can't watch this. This is too, like, these people love you. Like you are a meaningless, gross drug addict with all of the problems that you could ever want that are wrong. And these people are begging you to be in their life. And I said no. And I said no. And that I believe, and things are a bit fuzzy when you do drugs,
mhm.
but that was about the time that I could no longer actually get high. I would
Wow.
I would drink, I would go do whippets and I would add meth to it and I would do smoke whatever they had. I would take the pills and I could not get high enough to forget what my dad had said to me and what my mom was saying to me. And it
Mm.
just whittled me down into submission. And I finally succumbed. I said, fine, maybe I do have a problem with drugs and alcohol. That was me admitting.
Just a little.
Maybe I do. I'm not sure where you got the info, but maybe I got a little. Um, and I was broken, and I said, "All right, maybe you got me. I'll go to rehab. I'll go to treatment." But mostly, I agreed to go because I'd given up. I was like, "You guys win. I'll go give this a shot. Maybe I'll go to Southern California for a while. Maybe I'll find a girlfriend down there and just stay there for a while, or whatever it was, right?"
Right.
Because that was, if I couldn't have drugs and alcohol, the next best thing was a broken person to share life with, right?
You're right.
And so like cells attract in a petri dish. So if you're spiritually healthy, you find spiritually healthy. If you're unhealthy, you find unhealthy.
Come on.
That's the way that it works. And that was what I was seeking at that time.
Mm,
And yeah, man, it was looking back, there were so many pivotal moments where I could have gone left or I could have gone right. And what happened, I don't know why I went straight. I don't have a reason for it, but I can tell
mm,
you today that those moments where somebody's talking about how they don't feel worthwhile, they don't feel all these things, I'm like, oh man, I know what you're feeling. Like,
Right.
not just know the concept, but I know in my heart and I know in my head and I know what it felt like in my fingers and toes. I know what it feels like to feel meaningless and worthless.
Right.
And I also know that you don't have to feel that way anymore.
Come on.
You don't have to.
Hey Keith, you don't know how powerful you are, but you have a lot of power behind your words, man. And you speak with a lot of conviction. So I just want to let you know, man, I commend you for sharing that story with me. And I want to say thank you because I know after sharing it so often, like it's nothing to hold, but at the same time, I don't care who you are, bro. It takes a lot out of all of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like you
Yeah.
got to go back, you got to reminisce, you have to basically feel that pain over again, man. But to also have that feeling of getting a chance to see on how much your family genuinely loves you, man. Talking
Yeah.
to your mom, man, she explained just your siblings as well, man, who didn't even give up. Like, yo, like, nah, like this is my brother, and I'm gonna do everything I can for my brother to be here. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
who made y'all? like y'all have such a strong team, man, and it's definitely God involved without question. You know what I mean? Every step of the way, God has been right there by your side, but not only by your side, by your family's side. That's why your mom is the savage that you claim her to be, and that's why your dad is the Hulk that he is. You know what I mean? That was able to rip you almost out of your shirt, man. So
Yeah.
like, with that said, man, it leads into my next question, man. What is it like to work at a job and to not only necessarily work at a job, but to work in a place where you're working with your parents, but also the same people who got to see you at your worst? And you guys are second chancers. Like
Yeah.
your whole company is based off of you. That's how I see it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the whole company is based off of the old Keith. And with
Yeah.
that said, man, I commend you guys again just because not a lot of people give those guys a second chance. You know what I mean? Like, and you're doing it. It makes sense on why you're doing it, right? But your
Yeah.
family's doing it without even questioning it. So talk about that a little bit. That experience between the family dynamic and also running the business with the family.
Yeah. So the family business, like don't get it twisted. There are challenges, right? Like my dad and I are pretty passionate individuals. If you hear us sometimes like we're at each other's throats, then we open the door and go into the next meeting. We're like, hey guys, good morning, how's it going? And people are like, what are these, like, what is that about? Right? Like we fight behind closed doors and sometimes with doors open, we should close.
Right.
But the reality is, like, if he makes a decision, I'm going to support it. And like,
Mm.
and it's the inverse is true as well. Um, what it's like working, I believe that when you come from the place that I came from, we have an obligation and a responsibility to show people the path and the map of how to get out.
Mm.
It is an obligation and a responsibility. And if we didn't do it, if I didn't go to bat for the people that have check marks in their past, I don't think that my life would be as fulfilling. And I don't think that my destiny would be what it should be if I had left that box unchecked.
I agree. Hey, Keith, I'm laughing right now because your best friend just came into the camera. I was sitting there trying my hardest. I was like, you're telling me such a serious point right now. I got
And
him
he's over
tapping
there
on
goofing
the
off.
He's
That's
goofing off
awesome.
in the corner. I'm like, this is exactly how Keith would act if it was vice versa.
Yeah,
So it's like, you know what? I don't feel bad. But
you
ultimately,
should.
nah, continue, man, because that's
Yeah,
something very important, man, because like to work with your family, I can imagine it being difficult, especially when you think about what you're gonna have to deal with your child. Because you're
yeah,
gonna tell him exactly what to do, and then he's gonna look at you and tell you you're a jackass, and then you're gonna send
yeah.
him to Brian, and Brian's gonna say the same exact thing, and
He'd be
it's
like,
gonna work.
Dad, your friend is so smart.
Oh, really? Is
Oh,
he
huh,
really?
weird. Yeah.
So,
I'm glad that you took the cotton out of your ears when you talked to him, but you put it back in when you talk to me, right?
and
Like
I
that's,
feel like that's all relationships, man, isn't it? You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like I feel like sometimes even when it comes to sometimes maybe even your wife might tell you something and you're just like, I hear you, I do. But man, do I not want to. Like, and then you got
yes.
to go listen to it from your mom, and then you're like, she was right.
I think I heard this before somewhere. Somebody smart must have said that. I go into the case of deja vu here, but it's not deja vu. Somebody actually said it like an hour before, right?
You know what I'm saying? It is
Yeah.
crazy,
It's
man.
so here's the beautiful. So I'll back up a second. You play with snakes, you get bit,
Mm,
right? Period. Understand that principle in life. If you're going to be around dangerous people, if you're going to be around high performers, you're going to be around people who got energy about them at all, you're going to get bit. Like sometime that flare of energy is going to come up and it's going to be against you. And there's going to be a negative emotion or attachment to what just happened.
Right.
However, when you can harness what that old life or that negative energy is, and you can start to teach them why they have the thought that they have.
Right.
You know, I'll say one, like there's a name for a female dog, right? If you call someone that in prison, like that's fight to the death type of stuff, right?
Put
You're
them
going to go to
hands up.
blows, right? So there's a guy that we had a few years ago that somebody said, "Oh, stop that! You know, stop your bitching, blah blah blah." And this guy just goes, he just erupts. He's like, "What'd you call me?" And I'm like, "Bro, it's only the old life if you leave it alone." And I said, "You realize out here, like we're not in prison anymore. Like out here, we got an entirely different set of values that are attached. When somebody says that you're saying things and complaining, that is what it is called. It doesn't mean that he's calling you the same thing that it meant to you. Like, let me translate this for you.
Right.
But if you react that way, you're always going to be that."
Mm.
And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You're going to teach your kids. You're going to teach the people underneath you. You're going to teach the people that you interact with your whole life that they have power over you. And all they have to use is one 5-letter word." And he's like, and I said, "Does that 5-letter word mean anything more than any of the other 5-letter words? Does that word mean anything more than if you say the sky is brown, right? Or
Mm.
the ocean is red?" Right? No, it's just a word. It's just a word. You're attaching value to 5 individual pieces of the alphabet, and you get to determine your relationship with the pieces. Like you get to be the translator internally that says, "I'm going to get upset or I'm not." Right? That's what once you start to teach people that, and they realize that now they have like the steering wheel in life.
You're right.
And they go, "You mean when things get tough, I don't have to go back to jail?" I'm like, "No, when things get tough, you can pick up the phone, you can call someone, you can tell them the insane thoughts that you're thinking. They will laugh at you, you will feel good about it, and then you get back on with life."
Come on. I like
And
that.
when I'm thinking these absolutely insane things, but the thing is, Trey, it's not just with people who drink and do drugs. Like normal people have this, right? Like this depression era that we're in. And I say depression because I think sometimes people use feelings as like this depressive state, when what you're feeling is an emotion and you're labeling it as depression. And what you need to do is say, "That was sad. Let me move back into the happy."
Come on.
Right? Like, let me move my feet. And because God requires one thing for you to participate in your reality.
Come on.
Let me move my feet from what just occurred here to say, how do I harness this energy and turn this back around and get over here to where what I was experiencing is just that, just an experience. And how do I use it as wisdom? Because you can't have wisdom without going through life and picking up experiences and getting on to, Trey, what is it that we were back doing again? Oh, right. We were accomplishing things. We were chasing our goals. We're climbing that ladder, not just outwardly, but I'm climbing that ladder internally because I want to say, I don't want to be the kid that looks in the mirror and says, these are my faults. I want to be the guy that looks in the mirror and says, I have value. I'm lovable. I'm likable. And what you say doesn't actually determine my worth.
Ooh.
Right.
Come on, man. And that's huge, man. So I want you to talk about this then, since you're already on the rant of that. What was the biggest challenge for you coming out of that dust storm?
So like what I said before, I thought what I did was who I was. And I had a really hard time separating an activity, an action, even like a timeline of choices that I made from who I am, right? God made me to be innately valuable, regardless of what I accomplish, regardless of what anybody else says. Like he didn't make a mistake when he made me. He didn't make a mistake when he made you. We want to make sure that when he looks at us, he sees what he created. Well, what I saw when I finally got sober is I looked backwards, right? Because when you're in rehab, the only thing you got is time. Like they tell you when you can have your phone. They tell you when to do this. They tell you when to eat, when to sleep, go to bed, get up, go to treatment, go to your therapist, blah, blah, blah. Well, I couldn't separate my identity from my identity from the lifestyle that I had been in to my identity with the creator that created me. And what it took was for someone sat me down and said, just because you did it doesn't mean you are it. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, so the guys that won, he used a football analogy because sports are easy to relate with. He said, the guys that won the Super Bowl, like Super Bowl one, they're always going to be Super Bowl winners. But that doesn't mean that another Super Bowl winner isn't coming next. He said, just because you did it doesn't mean you are it, right? You won Super Bowl one. We're on what, 50? So this next week's Super Bowl 50 something.
Yeah.
So the guys who won number one, they can't take that away from them. But that also doesn't mean that just because you won Super Bowl one, you won the one in 2024.
Right.
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 He says you can't unring the bell, but you never have to ring it again. Right. So you can use that stuff that you did and you can look at it like a story. And what he did is he had me write down all the things I'd ever done bad. And I said, well, maybe I could just write like the worst things that I did. So, I had an entire yellow flipping legal pad. I got to the end of it and I said, well, I got to about, maybe a quarter of what I think I'd done bad. And he goes, maybe we'll start there. Like, we'll start with that. So he had me write all the things that I did bad. And then he had me write why I did them. And I said, what do you mean? I did them because I got something out of it. He goes, right, but what was threatened?
Wow.
So we wrote the list of what I did and then why I did it. And then the motivation behind the why. Usually it was fear, or it was insecurity, or it was I wanted something, selfishness, or it was because I was protecting somebody, or like I thought I was protecting somebody, or I thought I needed something, or right. Like there was all these really misplaced motivations behind it. And what it made me realize is that what I believed about life in general was not true. Like everything that I had operated for 31 years when he had me write that list was completely untrue. And I sat down and I said, well, what is true? And he said, God created you to be a perfect lighthouse for other people. But he said, he didn't create you and set you on a mountain. He said, I'm going to give you options for roads and you get to choose how you get to that hilltop where you plant your light. And he said, and if you do this right, you connect this lighthouse with this lighthouse, with this lighthouse, with this lighthouse, and you give people hope to get through the same dark valleys that you had to go through to get from lighthouse to lighthouse to lighthouse to lighthouse, because there's valleys in between every spot
time
you can see. And he said, what your job is to take the information that you've got, the experiences you've lived, add some purpose to them, give hope to other people. And when you can offer hope to others, you have fulfilled what God would call purpose. And I'm like, okay, so what you're telling me is like all my dirtbaggery has like a real meaning now. And he goes, yes, you can call out the guy who's being a dirtbag. You can also sit with people who have been dirtbagged. And you can say, hey, I'm really sorry that someone did that to you. Maybe I could shed some light on why they did it. And then I offer perspectives like, do you realize how lonely that person must have been to have treated you like that? And they're like, oh, that's a twist, right? Like somebody just reached out, hurt you, took something, broke up with you, broke your heart. And you say, imagine what it's like stuck in between their ears, where they thought that was normal or okay. And you just offer that perspective back and you say, hey, maybe it's not our place to go help them, but it is our place to not be hurt by them.
Come on.
And make that our burden to bear.
Right.
You can say, hey, I'm really sorry you're going through that, but let me talk about how the next time this comes up, how you can ask them questions like, hey, Tre, I noticed that you're a little sharp with me. Is there something you want to talk about? And then you offer time and space where you leave this really awkward pause and you let them fill
it. You hit him with one of these? You know what I mean?
Yes. But it's magic, man. Like this is what life's all about. When you can take people and you can look at Tre and say, hey man, I know you got some shocking news. I know that you've had this thing, this heartbreak, this whatever it is, but talk to me about what you can turn that bum right knee into, right?
It's the left.
It's the left. Okay. Oh, it was the left for me or the right for me because I was looking at you on stage facing me.
But see, the fact that it makes me even feel better. You know what I
mean? Yeah. But I get to ask you, hey, what are you using the disappointment in your life to fulfill? Right? You have said, like, if somebody didn't let me coach these kids and help teach these kids things that I really struggled with, I don't know if I would be able to work here, have this lifestyle, do these things, because this is the highest priority. Helping people, helping those kids not repeat the same mistakes. That's important to you.
Super important.
Yeah.
Probably the most important thing to me currently, other than being here, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that and family, of course. But with that said, man, that kind of goes into the next thing I want to ask you because we're coming up on 3 minutes left. What's your biggest goal for yourself this year? And you got 2 minutes because we gotta do the outro. You know how that go. So you got to be able to give this as fast as you can.
So I got two big things on my plate.
Talk to me.
They're not the one that is going to be the hardest for me is being present at home. I don't want to miss my son eating for the first time. I don't want to miss the things that I've spent 40 years praying for.
Mm,
Right. So that means that sometimes I'm working on figuring out what those boundaries are for my phone, because my phone is the biggest distraction in my life. And when I can have like the room that I get to talk to people on the phone with, there's one room that it's acceptable. So if I take a phone call, my wife knows that when I walk in that room, that I need to focus on the phone call.
come on.
Right. So boundaries and specifically being present. And then the other one, I got so into enjoying my son that I got away from some of my physical goals. I wasn't running as much. I was like, I just want to hold the little guy. He's so
Right.
cute. I just want to have fun with him. But I need to make sure that if I'm going to be a dad, that he is 60 when my son's graduating high school, that at 60 years old, I can go do anything he wants to do. So my health this year is get with no drugs. That's my deal. Like, I don't want to take any prescriptions. With health, with diet and exercise, I want to get all of the things in my life back under control.
Come on, Keith. I'm proud of you, brother. I can't even lie to you. And thank you for coming on Tre'd Talk, man, because you know it means the world to me to have you here, but to be also to be able to just talk about your story, man. Your story is such a powerful story, and it had me over here tearing up a little bit. I had to, you know how you got to suck it in a little bit.
Yeah.
but you know, man, I appreciate you every time and every trick of the trade, man. So appreciate you again for coming on. Is there anything that you want to leave these people with?
And my only piece of advice is if you feel lost and alone, it's because you haven't asked the right person.
Drop the mic, Keith. Wherever your mic is, drop it right now. That's what I need you to do. Drop that mic. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Tre'd Talk, and I'm your host, Tre Tipton. If you didn't know, now you know. And if you're new, tell everybody you know. With that said, it's all love. We love you, and always tune in to Tre'd Talk. We out of here.